Hello and welcome to the webinar and roundtable on the digital euro. My name is Henrike Hahn. I'm member of the European Parliament for the Greens EFA and Deputy Speaker of the German delegation of the Greens, the German Greens in the European Parliament. And I'm very happy to welcome all the viewers who will be able to ask questions in the second part of this webinar. And of course, our excellent panel of experts and high-level speakers to discuss the very important and current topic of the digital euro. And before I introduce you, of course, I have to spell out the technical aspects. Let me point to the house rules, which are posted in the chat box where you can find it. And I would also like to say that we have a translation available, English to German and German to English. And you only have to click at the globe symbol on your screen to be informed. Und nochmal auf Deutsch sage ich es auch nochmal, wir haben heute eine Live-Übersetzung von Deutsch auf Englisch und andersherum. Und wenn Sie die deutsche Übersetzung aktivieren möchten, dann müssen Sie nur auf das kleine Globus-Symbol klicken und dann funktioniert es. Und as I already said, the audience can ask questions in the Q&A section, which we will try to collect as fast as possible and try to answer in the second part of this webinar. So, as a substitute member of the Economic and Monetary Affairs Committee in the European Parliament, I have the pleasure to be selected by my group as a shadow rapporteur on the digital euro. And in that pleasure, I have the honor to be joined today on this high-level panel to discuss everything the digital euro by, first of all, Mr. Piero Cipollone, newly appointed member of the European Central Bank Executive Board in charge of the digital euro, so a real expert with these kind of issues, and he will give us an update on the status quo of the digital euro project at the ECB, and I'm looking forward to it. And then we have Jan Seysens, head of the Digital Finance Unit at the European Commission. He will introduce us to the proposal on the digital euro published in June of this year, as well as the Commission's latest thinking on how to best design a digital central bank currency for the euro area. And then we have again Anna Martin, Financial Services Officer at the European Consumer Organization, BEUC. We worked together already. We had shared a panel. So she's a member of the ECB Digital Euro Rulebook Development Group and the European Retail Payment Board Working Group on the digital euro, and will give us an insight how consumer groups are receiving the proposal for digital euro. So, and of course, last but certainly not at least, the Mr. Axel Schäfer, who is a payment regulation and innovation specialist at Inca Group, amongst other. He's a member of the Market Advisory Group and the Rulebook Development Group of the Eurosystem's Digital Euro Project, and he's here to present the views of the retail sector. So a wonderful panel full of experts I'm really grateful for. And before we dive into this important topic, let me just say a few words to put some context to today's topical debate. So as our economies and societies become ever more digitalized, so does the European money system, and citizens and businesses have slowly moved from coins and notes to electronic money, stored in commercial bank accounts and exchanged through different electronic payment solutions. And the digitalization of our payments ecosystem has made our daily lives a lot easier and more convenient. And at the same time, this digitalization has come at a cost. If access to and acceptability of cash declines, money turns from a public good into a private good managed exclusively by banks and other private payment service providers. And that is why the introduction of the digital euro provides for an excellent opportunity to make our European money system fit for an ever more digitalized world, improve financial and digital inclusion, and retain the public nature of the euro. And beyond that, the introduction of a digital euro can also enhance the resilience of our European payment system in case of outages or cyber attacks, and reduce the dependence of non-EU payment service providers. So it would be the first EU-wide, easily accessible, cost-free offline and online means of payment with cash-like levels of privacy protection, and at the same time The design of the digital euro has to be carefully calibrated. We all know we have to be very careful with these projects. For instance, concerns about the privacy aspects of the digital euro are valid and have to be carefully considered. And making the right policy choices is a complex and technical exercise. However, the design of the digital euro will be crucial in determining its uptake by citizens, its resilience, and ultimately its democratic legitimacy. So, of course, we have a lot of questions on this topic, and I'm very delighted to be joined by such an excellent panel of high-level speakers today. So I would first like to give the floor to Mr. Piero Cipollone, and Mr. Cipollone is the newly appointed member of the ECB Executive Board. Congratulations again. And in this role, among other things, in charge of leading the Digital Euro project, I just heard is the very first appointment you have with this nomination. So I'm really honored to have you here. And Mr. Cipollone is no stranger to the digital euro, having been a member of the high-level task force on a digital euro at the ECB since January 2020 in his capacity as Deputy Governor of the Bank of Italy. And Mr. Cipollone will tell us about the ECB's reasoning and intentions for the introduction of a digital euro and give us an update on the state of play of the digital euro project at the ECB. So, Mr. Cipollone, you have the floor for about 15 minutes, and we're looking forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. And again, thank you for inviting me. I am really pleased to join this session in such good company. My fellow panelists represent key stakeholders that are essential counterpart for us as we progress in the digital euro project. I believe this illustrates vividly that the digital euro is not just a means of payment, but a true European initiative. Exchanging with the whole stakeholder and the public at large is key to deliver a digital euro that works for everyone. Money is a social construct, it's not just a technical issue, and we strongly believe this. That's why we engaged with the all stakeholders that have part to this project. I would like to present a brief update of the Digital Euro project and the foreseen next step, which will run in parallel to the ongoing legislative process. Can we move to slide 2, please? Let me start by recalling what the Digital Euro will be and what it will bring in case the Governing Council will decide to issue it, because this decision are yet to be made. The Digital Euro would be a digital form of cash. Today, banknotes and coins are the only form of central bank money citizens have access to. Digital Euro would offer a digital retail means of payments issued by the ECB and available to citizens and business in the entire euro area. As we move toward a more generalized, digitalized economy, this would be a logical step in the evolution of our currency. Let me stress, though, that the digital euro is not going to replace it. It's not meant to replace cash. It's meant to complement cash. A digital euro would combine some of the most valued characteristics of cash with the convenience of digital payments. A digital euro would be free of charge for citizens, designed to be highly inclusive, leaving no one behind. It will be available to consumers of any digital payments in whole area, euro area countries. It would be used to pay from person to person in physical and online stores and for transaction with the government. The digital euro would provide high privacy standard in line with the European regulations. And obviously, as I said, it would facilitate offline digital payments. No other payments instruments offers all these features together. The digital euro would fill this gap. Can we move to slide 3, please? Now, why do we need the digital euro? We live in a time when almost every area of life is becoming digital, including people's payment preferences. We are committed to cash, but to ensure that our currency remains future-proof and fit for purpose, we need to also address people's increasing preference to pay digitally. So we want to offer a digital form of cash that will allow citizens and business to benefit from the advantages of the central bank money, also when paying digitally. A digital euro would serve the 347 million people that live in the euro area. It would be designed to make our life easier when we pay. Nobody would be obliged to pay with a digital euro, but everyone would have a digital euro means of payments that can be used to pay anytime and anywhere throughout the euro area. In other words, the digital euro would support our freedom to pay. A digital euro would also strengthen European monetary sovereignty and preserve our strategic autonomy, while supporting innovation and competition in the European payment sector. A digital euro would ensure that there is a pan-European payment solution for the euro area under European governance, relying on a European infrastructure. This will strengthen Europe's resilience. A digital euro would provide a platform on which European supervised intermediaries could build pan-European services for their customers, increasing efficiency, reducing costs, and fostering innovation. Can we move to slide 4, please? Here where we stand. Over the past 2 years, we have investigated and developed a high-level product design for the digital euro. On November 1st, we started the digital euro preparation phase to focus on further developing the digital euro, including finalizing the digital euro scheme, which consists of a single set of rules, standard and procedure to standardize digital euro payments across the euro area. Second, starting to reach for possible providers to develop a digital euro platform and infrastructure. Third, continuing to learn through experimentation and finally diving deeper in key topics like the offline functionality and testing and rollouts plans for the future. Throughout this process, the ECB will make the appropriate adjustment in the digital euro design in line with the legislative deliberation that will run in parallel to the project. The first stage of the preparation phase will last around 2 years, after which the Governing Council will decide whether to launch the next phase. Can we move to next slide, please? So this is basically for the first, tells what we are going to do in the next 2 years. For the next years, the digital euro will evolve in parallel to the legislative process. During the investigation phase, ECB maintained a very positive and constructive cooperation with the European institutions and the policymakers, as well as other relevant stakeholders like merchant and consumer associations. We aim to continue this engagement throughout the next stage of the project. The ECB stands ready to provide technical input and support to the European co-legislator while legislative deliberation takes place. Broad political support is indeed crucial for the digital euro. Just a second, give me a second. Oh, sorry. The ECB stands ready to provide technical input and support to the European co-legislator while legislative deliberation take place. Broad political support is indeed crucial for the euro system before deciding whether to issue a digital euro. A decision to issue a digital euro could only be taken when the EU legislative process has been completed. And it is only conceivable if there is a broad public and political support. Next slide, please. As I said before, the digital euro is a common European project. Both the design of the digital euro and its regulation framework are key to ensuring it retains its characteristics as a public good. These two processes, the legislative and the design, should advance in parallel, respecting each other's competencies. Because the digital euro would be a liability of the central bank, the issuance of the digital euro will be a decision of the euro system. Likewise, it should remain for the euro system to develop and calibrate the necessary safeguards, such as the holding limits, to preserve monetary policy transmission and financial stability. Building on the recent ECB legal opinion, let me highlight some key aspects of the digital euro legislative process, which I know that Jens will discuss in more details. First, the ECB fully supports the proposed legal tender status with mandatory acceptance. This means that people will always be able to pay with digital euro in any shop of the euro area that accepts digital payments. Our focus group showed that always having the option to pay with the digital euro is very much valued by the users. No more inconveniences of having your card rejected or facing unexpected fees while traveling across the euro area or when shopping at certain stores. Second, the ECB fully supports the proposed right for people to obtain digital euro at the bank they hold an account with, without the need to switch providers. Banks already have established the relationship with their clients and are best placed to be their direct digital euro counterpart. Third, the ECB also welcomes dedicated authorities will provide basic digital payment services and digital inclusion support face-to-face to everyone who needs it, including people from vulnerable social group like the elderly or people with disability or even unbanked people. Fourth, can we move to the next slide? Sorry. Fourth, the ECB welcomes that the proposed legislation preserve the digital euro's public nature by ensuring people will be able to use basic digital euro services free of charge for basic day-to-day purposes. On that note, the ECB recommends adding two more services to the basic one. In particular, automatic fund and defunding, meaning the possibility to add and withdraw money from the digital euro wallet, and second, the possibility for users to switch their digital euro account from one payment provider to the other of their choice. Including these two elements into the basic service list will guarantee that individuals won't be charged for services that are already provided for free by their banking nowadays. Fifth, the ECB support legislating on two more areas. First, fair economic incentive for private intermediaries to address the operational costs of distributing a digital euro, as as it is the case today for other digital means of payment. And second, a cap on fees to provide adequate safeguards against excessive charges for merchants. Needless to say, the ECB stands ready to assist the co-legislator in a consultative and technical role in their decision to set the caps for these fees. Last but not least, the ECB welcomes that the proposed regulation aims at ensuring high degree of privacy and data protection, while minimizing money laundering and terrorist finance risks. The digital euro will achieve a cash-like level of privacy for offline payments, as it would simply rely on a direct transfer from the payer to the payee. The ECB aims to deliver both online and offline digital euro models as from the first issuance. Can we move to slide 8, please? All European institutions have to play their part to achieve our common goal of making the digital euro a success. Since the digital euro project was launched in October 2021, the ECB has regularly engaged with a wide variety of European stakeholders whose views and concerns have been considered. This approach will continue and upgrade in the next stage of the project. We will continue engaging with all relevant stakeholders. First, European policymakers. We have regularly reported to an exchange with the European Parliament and the Eurogroup. And we have had a deep and excellent collaboration with the European Commission, and we are working with the European Data Protection Supervisor. Market participant. We are engaging with the representative of all sides of the market, including consumers, financial institutions, and merchants. The central bank community. We are exchanging with the other central bank working on CBDC, notably in the context of the Bank for International Settlements. And other stakeholders, for instance, we want to continue hearing the views of the civil society organization and the academics. I'm going to conclude. Last but not least, we will intensify our engagement with the public at large. We will continue to seek the views of the public, as we have done, for instance, through survey and focus group. And we will step up our communication effort to raise awareness and to respond to questions and concerns. Thank you very much for listening. I'm hoping, I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Mr. Cipollone. That was very interesting. And I would give the floor right away to Mr. Jan Seysens, please.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hahn, for organizing this exchange today, and to Mr. Cipollone indeed for already setting out the project and indeed the ECB's perspective on it. I will try not to repeat what Mr. Cipollone said, because indeed, as you also pointed out, we have cooperated quite closely on this between the European Central Bank and the European Commission. But I will rather focus maybe here now on what is the specific role on the objectives of the legislative proposal indeed on the digital euro, which we have presented before the summer, and which indeed is now being examined, scrutinized, and I'm sure improved a lot by Mrs. Hahn and her colleagues in the European Parliament and by the Ministers of Finance. Maybe just before doing that, shortly, why from the European Commission side have we decided, indeed, have our Commission has decided actually to propose establishing a digital euro and to support this project? I think Mr. Cipollone has already pointed out the perspective of the ECB, and I think we are here relatively closely aligned. It is very clear that the more we are moving into the digital age, while citizens will continue to have access to cash, and we have also proposed a legislative framework for this, which would ensure and safeguard and anchor also actually the right to access and to the use of cash as well across the EU in European legislation. So I think we are very strong and firm in our support and commitment to the continued availability of cash and the use. We also need to just realize that more and more citizens, not because they're obliged to, but just because they want, they use increasingly digital means of payment. And as you can see, I'm not anymore the youngest, but if I look at the generation of my kids, for them, payments means essentially it's a card, it's digital. I mean, cash is less and less relevant. And if we see how much of our purchases today we are doing in e-commerce, in the internet, well, you just cannot use cash in the internet. So in that sense, actually thinking ahead 1, 2, 3 generations, indeed, we let's say there will be a real issue caused by the fact that indeed public money is not available for use in the digital space. And if one thinks, and that is certainly the conviction of the European Commission, and we share here the view of the ECB, that it is important for financial stability perspective, for also maintaining a sound monetary system, but also really for inclusion of our citizens and all parts of the society, that indeed public means of payment, public money remains actually available and usable across our economy, then indeed as working towards a digital euro also for use by retail citizens, by citizens and businesses is, let's say, an important project. I think we also see, of course, this under the perspective of promoting innovation in Europe as well, innovative means of payment. And last but not least, we do think that as other parts of the world are moving ahead indeed with digital means of payment, it is important also from the perspective of strengthening Europe's open strategic autonomy. I think we are an open continent and we want to remain that. And we have a lot of, let's say, private means of payment around in Europe, and that is positive from our perspective. But it is important also that from the European perspective, we have something to rely on indeed, let's say, in any situations, in any instances. And Susanne, I think you also already pointed to this aspect of resilience. So those are in a nutshell a bit, I think, the key motivations why the European Commission indeed has proposed to establish the legal framework of the digital euro. Now, what is the role of the legislative framework here? A digital euro, as much as cash, should be issued indeed by the European Central Bank, of course, which is Europe's central bank and in charge and responsible for issuing a means of payment and for issuing cash today. A digital euro, however, does require a couple of, let's say, adjustment in the legal framework, whether that is about money laundering rules, whether that's about privacy rules and others. And of course, moving towards a digital form of the euro is also a key choice with significant political implications. And that is why also our commissioners felt that indeed this is in full agreement, again, as Mr. Cipollone pointed out with the ECB, that indeed needs to also be indeed an act from the legislator to actually also confirm and shape in a way the general principles of this digital euro. I think we try to keep the balance here. I think the legislator and the commission, I would include us here in the broader sense, we are usually not good at running IT systems ourselves or at kind of deciding on all the technical details in a way. What is essential and what we try to propose is indeed a framework which sets up very clearly the uses, the guiding principles, the key rights and obligations, while then, of course, leaving enough leeway also for the choice of technologies and implementation indeed, so that this framework doesn't become a straitjacket, which would actually ultimately also can then also make actually the euro more difficult. But that is, I think, a balance we try to ensure. And key elements of the legislation certainly concern indeed the question of exactly of data protection. This is clearly something where the legislator must set out all the key elements here, which data is flowing where, how does anti-money laundering reporting then work. Very important in terms of the question of wide acceptance and inclusiveness, the question of legal tender on the one hand, so the need for merchants in principle to accept actually the digital euro, with exceptions indeed for smaller merchants which do not want to accept digital payments at all. And on the other hand, of course, looking at the user and issuance distribution side, a digital euro will not fall from the sky as we are getting cash today out of our ATMs. We propose that indeed a digital euro would be obtained by citizens in the future through our commercial banks, which we have, with whom many, let's say, Europeans have accounts. and in certain instances where this is not the case, indeed through public bodies. So again, I think our proposal establishes here these obligations, indeed, both for the merchants and indeed for the financial sector, but of course also lines out what will be the roles of these sectors in the digital euro. And I think it is certainly something where I think for all the stakeholders, consumers, financial sector, and indeed the merchant side, there is something in for them here, basically, some advantages. Now, maybe as a last point, let me make 3 points on what, from our perspective, a digital euro is and how we have proposed it to be, but also what it is not, basically. A digital euro would indeed, let's say, be a digital means of payment. It is not, as per our proposal, indeed programmable money. It is not money which the state, the ECB, or any other body could actually limit in its use, so that, for example, you can use it to buy apples but no cigarettes, or that you can use it to buy sustainable goods but not less sustainable ones. We have other policy tools for sustainable finance and other matters, but money clearly must not be indeed a tool of steering, let's say, citizens' behavior. And in that sense, you also clearly see that the digital euro will also be a counter project to maybe this, let's say, public CBDCs as they are being envisaged and considered in other parts of the world. One digital euro will always be one digital euro. It will always be able to be used for any purpose as much as cash today. And this is also an important element from the privacy perspective, which indeed I think we have enshrined closely in the proposal. A digital euro, and Mr. Cipollone already mentioned that in the framework we proposed it, put in this offline version in particular, would have offer cash-like privacy features. So the central banks would not see at all any identity. My commercial bank knows, of course, that I have an account with them. They also know that, for example, when I use an offline device, that I'm charging 100 euro on the offline device, as much as they know that I'm taking out 100 euros from the cash machine. But they do not know whether I use those 100 euros then indeed for apples or for cigarettes, and they will not know in the future whether with the offline device I then buy apples or cigarettes. So indeed, this non-programmability and the strong privacy element, we think, is also a strong positive feature of the digital euro, and where the digital euro will also, compare to everything we know today in digital payments, provide really added value. So we are thinking here that we are proposing a means of payment which is significantly more private than all the existing electronic means of payment. The second point here I want to make about what the digital euro is and isn't. A digital euro, as we propose this, is above all a means of payment. It is not above all a, let's say, means for storing value, and that's why we have also proposed that under the regulation, the digital euro would not carry actually interest, because we do believe that, let's say, in principle, when it comes to citizen savings, and then, of course, that's the other side of the coin, the intermediation into credit for the economy, our commercial banks are probably better placed than the central banks actually to continue actually pursuing this role. And to ensure this, actually, we have proposed a number of instruments here, which the central banks will then have at their, let's say, availability, but indeed, which will also be closely framed by the legislation, by the co-legislator, to make indeed sure that, for example, you cannot have digital euro holdings above a certain amount, really to make sure that this primary nature of a means of payment is preserved. The last thing I want to mention is that a digital euro should complement, but it should not replace neither cash nor indeed private electronic means of payment. As much as we have today a coexistence of different means of payment, we do see this very much for the future. And we have indeed also proposed for the legislator to enshrine a principle of interoperability here. The digital euro should actually build wherever possible on standards, rules, infrastructures which have already been developed for private electronic means of payment. And whatever is developed in the context of the digital euro should also be, wherever possible, designed with a view of also being reused and applicable indeed for other means of payment. This shows very much, I think, also illustrates very much this idea that digital euro should indeed complement, but should not replace actually other means of payment. And we do see also in the future there a very good balance and combination indeed of different means of payment which citizens have available as they have. I think I'll stop there, and I'm looking forward to the discussion and the further interventions.
Thank you very much, dear Jan Seysens. That was very interesting, especially also the more practical approach to the digital euro, because I mean, I think if someone's listening to this conversation, it's very technical, very detailed oriented, which is important, of course, because we have to take very important decisions about financial stability and privacy and all these kind of things. But I always wonder if people understand all what we have to decide about and what we reflect when you come from an outer perspective, which is not so, you know, in that topic. So thank you very much for that. And then we come to Mrs. Anna Martin. Thank you very much for being with us today as well. And consumer groups are playing a key role in the process of designing a digital central bank currency for the euro area. And of course, here comes in the understanding and the practical aspects as well. The uptake and acceptance of the digital euro will depend crucially on the extent to which consumer rights and needs are reflected in the design. So we're looking forward to your thoughts in that context. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you very much for having invited me to this panel, which is a very interesting discussion about the digital euro. I would actually like to start my intervention by the last point, which was mentioned by Jan Seysens, which is the fact that the digital euro is not replacing cash. I think that's a very important starting point because we have very different consumer groups. We have elderly consumers, we have consumers with disabilities, we have younger consumers, and we have also, I mean, in these groups, different people with different behaviors. And for us, it's very important that consumers in the future still have the possibility to pay with cash. And the Commission rightly issued also a proposal to improve the access and acceptance to cash together with the digital euro proposal. So we are expecting improvements on the side of cash together with the proposal on the digital euro. So that's my starting point. Now to the digital euro project. We very much welcome the project. We think that it is important to think about a public payment method in a digital world because whether we want it or not, goods and services are increasingly offered online and there cash is simply not an option. So we want for the digital sphere also to have a public payment method where we indirectly by our representatives in the European Parliament, but also via our national governments, decide as citizens and as consumers, what are the rules of the game for these payment methods? What is the level of privacy we are attaching to this payment method? How do we deal or how do we allow people with disabilities or elderly people to access these payment methods? How expensive should they be for consumers, but then also for merchants? And Axel will tell you more about this later. So there are more important questions, and it's now really in the hands of our representatives at the European level, and of course then together with the European Central Bank and national central banks to make this decision. How should this digital euro look like? And if we say from scratch on that the digital euro doesn't bring any added value, I think that's an anticipated, it's too fast judgment. We have now really the chance to make it a really attractive payment method for consumers. And it's now in our hands to make that happen rather than directly opposing a project which we haven't designed yet. And I think Jan Seysens and also Mr. Cipollone already presented some of the key factors, but I would like to illustrate them with some really concrete examples from consumers in terms of how can that bring added value to us all. And I would like to start with the fact of having a payment method which is really acceptable everywhere, online and offline. And I remember actually my student times where I didn't had a credit card, and I had to ask my parents every time when I was purchasing something online or booking a hostel whether I can borrow their card. And that's not exactly what you like to do when you're a student and you're experiencing a new freedom. So this was one of the examples which came to my mind when I thought that we would have the digital euro, which is offered to us free of charge and you don't pay for a credit card. And you can really pay everywhere, and you're not going to the payment checkout and then thinking like, oh, now I don't have the payment method which I actually need. So this is something which I'm personally very much looking forward to, and also in the other way around, actually. A lot of people own a credit card, but then they are going to smaller shops. I remember a trip to Berlin, and one of my friends had no cash in their wallet and only a credit card. And whenever we went to a cafe, the cafe told her, no, sorry, you have to consume 15 euro, at least for 15 euros, so that you can pay with credit card. So these are the kind of really practical situations where the digital euro could come in with an attractive package for consumers, and then also Axel will tell you on the merchant side. So this acceptance is one point. The second point, which I would like to mention, is the fact that all the basic services of the digital euro would be free of charge. And we are very much expecting really a fully functional digital euro account, which is free of charge. And this would bring major added value for people who are currently relying on the basic payment account, who don't have who are really limited in terms of economic means. And we just had a study by our German member, Stiftung Warentest, who showed that the cheapest basic payment account you can get is costing you 60 euros a year. And this means that people who have very limited monthly budgets pay 60 euros a year to have a payment account. Of course, you can have a fully digital account almost for free. But if you want a bank branch, if you want regular cash withdrawals, if you maybe even want a bank account statement in paper, you rely on these accounts which offer you this service, and you cannot go for a fully online version. So this is something where also, if we get a digital euro account with a full amount of basic services for free, that would really bring added value. And then last but not least, and I think that I was doing a sneak review on what I saw on the chat in terms of questions, is the whole issue of privacy. And here I would like to point to a study of a consumer group in the US who just analyzed the behavior of MasterCard in terms of selling online payment transaction data. And what is happening is that a lot of our payment transaction data is sold in an aggregated way. Of course, you don't have the right, also due to GDPR, you don't have the right to sell individual payment transaction data, but you can well do as a company to do it in an aggregated way, because then you don't have the personal data attached to it anymore. But this reveals a lot about consumer behavior in an aggregated way. It tells where are the people living who are spending a lot. I mean, they created, for example, categories like high frequent spender in fast fashion or this kind of thing. And then you can, and they linked it to the zip code. So you can then really direct your targeted advertising to the place where you believe the people are living, which are more inclined to buy your goods. And of course, there's also a whole privacy aspect linked to it in terms of like, we know that there are techniques out there to de-anonymize this data. And there was an MIT study showing that basically if you have 4 data points from the person, you are able to identify the person on the aggregated data, meaning that this can be used, for example, by fraudsters. You get really precise data set of payment data, and you can use that to build a very credible payment fraud case. So these are the kind of things which we believe we should address with the digital euro to really make sure that online payment transaction data is not stored, and you have the possibility to pay in an anonymous way. Of course, there are limits to it. If you pay 10,000 euros online, there has to be checks in terms of money laundering and these kind of things. But when you think about really low value transactions, we think it's proportionate to have more data protection also online. And we are very pleased to see that the ECB just issued in their opinion on the legislative proposal that they are open to work on technical solutions to make this happen. And this shows again that it's now really in the hand of the legislators to design the digital euro we want, and then we have the really the luck that the ECB showed so much openness to work in every possible technical solution to make it happen. So very much looking forward to the discussion, to receive questions, and handing over again to Mrs. Hahn. Thank you for the panel.
Thank you very much for your perspective of the consumer side. And I think, yeah, you're right. It can't often be repeated enough that the digital euro will not or shall not replace cash. This is very important because I've seen it in the Q&A section as well, that remark. So I think that's important, and maybe Axel Schäfer will also point on the facts with his perspective on the retail sector, and we are looking forward to your thoughts here too. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Hahn, and thank you for having me on this panel. It's a pleasure to share our point of view regarding this very important project. I, of course, have also a few aspects that I would like to share with you regarding the project. Let me first start by reiterating something that Mr. Cipollone already referred to earlier. Of course, in a more and more digitized world, it's inevitable that also payments become more digital. Of course, it's important to also mention here again that at no point in time are we supportive of removing cash from circulation. The digital euro should therefore be considered as a complement, an added choice to the consumer to make their payments. Why is this important also for us? Because as a European big retailer, we are present in I think something like 13 or 14 of the 20 Eurozone countries, approximately 20 EU member states. We are a truly European merchant, and therefore also accept logically payments across the Eurozone. If we do so, we have currently no choice but to accept or but to rely on payments orchestrated by non-European multinationals, right? So there is clearly a need to further increase competition by providing users and consumers the choice of a truly European payment solution to make their purchases both in store and online. I think that's very important. So that just providing the consumers the additional choice to make their purchases in central bank money, regardless of the sales channel that they're opting for. Why is this important for us as merchants? Because we anticipate that the addition of such an option will inevitably lead to an increase in competition. And this is something that we've been struggling for a long time in the let's say payments ecosystem, that the entire ecosystem has been dominated by a few players, and those players, as referred earlier, are non-European, right? They, Anna, you mentioned that data is very likely being moved outside the borders of the EU. Fortunately, we have GDPR, so we know that they are somewhat protected, but I think it's good to know that there should be a truly European payment solution in place that is also respecting the highest privacy levels possible. So of course, when introducing that additional option, we, as I said, anticipate an increase in competition that will hopefully have also an impact, of course, on the cost structure, also of the incumbent providers, right? Currently, competition is limited. The two big card schemes, they hardly compete against each other. the market is somewhat inefficient when it comes to the prices they are charging to merchants. We have observed that in the past, which is also one of the reasons why the European Union introduced fee caps for the interchange fees that are paid from the merchant acquiring bank to the issuers of the consumers. That is one of the key aspects why we welcome the project to start with. It's really that additional choice to users that ideally increases competition. Another very important aspect to mention here and why we welcome this initiative is that we see it has great potential in terms of innovation. If designed in the right way, the digital euro infrastructure should allow participating PSPs to come up with truly innovative features that they should offer to the end users. Right. This should ideally allow them to, further, provide these services to the users by making it more attractive, by perhaps also monetizing these services. They could also then actively endorse the digital euro service. As we've heard earlier, the basic services will be offered free of charge. So if the PSPs innovate on the basis of the infrastructure, they should be able to also, come up with new features that the customers would want to see, and therefore also drive adoption. Because in our point of view, ultimately, the end user, the consumers, will determine whether the digital euro will become a success or not, right? And we see the innovative potential here as being critical, as well as the privacy settings that Anna alluded to earlier. So without the consumers actively, endorsing, embracing the offering, we see the digital euro having a hard time actually kicking off. So the devil is in the detail, but with the right functionalities and the right endorsement also from the banking sector to make available these added values to the end users and to promote the privacy also for the offline version, we see that consumers should very likely be in a position to accept it. The legal tender status, which we also talked about before, is of course also a very important aspect for the merchant community. I believe it will not be the deciding factor whether it will be a success or not. As I mentioned, I think it will be the consumer adoption, which is why we are also a bit skeptical to introduce a very hard legal tender status for the merchant community. We believe that there should be more exceptions, and perhaps this is something we need to discuss and elaborate as the discussion proceeds, because we understand that mandatory acceptance of the digital euro should especially then take place when comparable digital means of payments are already accepted by the merchant. This, of course, preassumes that the digital euro will basically be plug and play with existing solutions, right? So whenever you already accept a debit card, it should be the same to accept a digital euro payment. Hopefully that's true, but until we really know the economic impact on merchants to implement such a solution, it's very, very difficult for us to get behind such a strong mandate, because frankly, we don't really know what kind of costs will be incurred. Very much closely linked to that are, of course, the fees merchants would have to pay to accept digital euro payments. And we welcome the Commission's proposal and also the opinion by the European Central Bank that there should be safeguards in place in terms of fees levied by the PSPs on the merchants, especially if there is a legal tender status in place. When merchants are de facto forced to accept the digital euro, we need to ensure that the fees that are charged to merchants are capped. We've seen in the past that when fees are uncapped, prices, they skyrocket. Unfortunately, the two-sided market of the payment system, where you have on the one side the merchant, on the other side the consumers, it's inefficient. Both sides don't talk to each other. The consumers will not know the true costs that are incurred by the merchants. So unless we implement caps, it will be very difficult for us to support this project, because we simply can't estimate the costs that the payment service providers will charge. So we fully support the safeguards that have been introduced, and we believe, since the euro system will bear its own costs in terms of settlement infrastructure, there should be no scheme fees. We estimate that the costs incurred by the PSPs, they should be very, very low. They should be much lower than what they're currently facing in terms of processing electronic means of payments. So consequently, costs passed on to merchants should also be much lower. We estimate that they should be very, very close to zero. Nonetheless, we are still encouraging the co-legislators to really look at the fee cap and make sure it's there for the safeguarding of the merchant fees. And with that, I'll stop, and I'll look forward to a great discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Mr. Schäfer, for your interesting thoughts. And I think when I'm listening to your remarks, this is exactly when we had recently our first shadow meeting on the digital euro. This is exactly what we as parliamentarians talk about, these kind of issues that are important, the ones you mentioned, from privacy to stability. And when I have a short look at the Q&A questions, I realized that there were some questions rather critical, of course, and I think that's very important, because we have to give answers to these kind of questions. So because there was a question in it, insisting on the fact, well, not everyone is supporting this kind of project, and we should let the European citizens vote about that. But I think, of course, we have to answer these questions. They're serious questions, and then very happy to see how many details are in the Q&A section as well. And let me pick up some questions to you and start with Mr. Cipollone, because there are lots of questions on your expertise as well in that section. And I would like to ask, one of the hotly debated topics around the digital euro is whether it should come with a holding limit. It was mentioned by some of the speakers already, a holding limit to ensure that in case of bank runs, it can't be used as a safe asset. It doesn't increase financial stability risks. And I saw some of our viewers are interested to understand the need for a holding limit. So maybe you could explain what it means, first of all, and then why we need it. And maybe you could also explain the need for a holding limit and the situations in which a holding limit is not needed. So that would be great. Thanks.
So to make things simple, we need the holding limits for the following reason: to make clear that the digital euro is a mean of payment, not a store of value. Today, normal citizens, they have their savings in a bank account, especially those that needs to be used for payments. Banks use this money to lend to business, so that, and they transform, they say, the time structure of their liabilities. But this is too complicated. The basic issue is that banks use the deposits that they have to lend this deposit to business. And this is the way to channel part of the saving to the economy. Now, suppose that everybody takes out of the banks this deposit, and they put this deposit into CBD, digital euro. The bank would not have the liquidity to lend money to the business, and this would be a huge break to the economy, because the economy needs liquidity, business needs liquidity to make their investment, to run their business. So we need to we need to be careful about that, because then we would would be kind of a huge tightening in the economy. That's why we need to be careful that there is no this sudden movement of money out of the banks into the digital euros. However, so we have been thinking about this for a while, and we thought that, you know, someone is flagging the numbers, which is 3,000 euros. Now, this is a very high limit for what we know. I guess there are estimates that suggest half of the European citizens have half of that figure in their bank account. So, which means that we are accommodated the possibility to use, you know, to have enough liquidity in terms of digital euro to run people everyday payments. So we have to balance the freedom of people to have cash, which in this case, cash, digital cash, with the possible consequences of having that much of cash in their account. And this is, as was suggesting, could be extremely dangerous in case of bank runs, meaning that if people is afraid that there's something going to happen to a bank, they could suddenly move all their money out of the bank, by that realizing the fear itself. So it would be a self-fulfilling prophecy, but thereby inducing the failure of a bank. With this, and this would have a serious consequence in terms of financial stability. So we have to find to have the right balance among all these possibilities. We feel that, you know, the calibration has to be made, and in precise term, conditioning on all the economic situation. But people have been flagging around numbers. Now, 3,000 euros seems to be a number that would accommodate the payments needs of the citizen without disrupting the business model of the bank. So it seems to be a reasonable estimate. But again, we need to fine tune this number as we get close to the possible issuance. I would stop here.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. And I would like to ask Anna Martin. There's a question in the chat as well concerning the mandatory acceptance of cash. We talked about it already in this round. The Commission has introduced this provision for the digital euro file, but not for the legal tender one. It was mentioned by Mr. Schäfer, this expert before. So is that, in your view, a gap in the Commission proposal?
Yes, indeed. I mean, what we have in the digital euro proposal is really general acceptance of cash, of digital euros, unless you have a micro enterprise who does not accept a comparable mean of digital payments. And you have an explicit exclusion of the ex ante unilateral exclusions of digital euros. So you could not, as a shop, put at your door a sign saying, we do not accept digital euros, but you really have to accept them. So this is a very strong rule on acceptance, and we are supportive of this. For the cash proposal, this looks weaker. We have a legal tender, but we have a wording inside there saying that if the payer, so the consumer and the payee, the merchant in this case, would agree on a different payment method, then you can exclude cash. Now the whole question is in really this detail, how is this agreement looking like? And if the agreement is, as a merchant, I put a no cash sign on my door, and I agree as a consumer then not to enter the shop, for us this looks like a very weak agreement from the consumer perspective. So what we would like to see is that we also have this article on this exclusion of ex-ante unilateral exclusions in the digital euro proposal. We would like to have it also in the cash proposal, and I think that's also something which was mentioned in the ECB legal opinion recently.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. And I was seeing in the chat, which includes really very specific and smart questions I'm very happy about. I've seen a question for Jan Seysens. I would like to ask, is there a plan on how to resolve the inherent conflict between providing cash-like privacy guarantees, like anonymous payments and money laundering considerations? These seems like inherently opposing poles to me, and I'm curious if studies have been conducted on the technical feasibility here, because we as parliamentarians talked about that already, and yeah, I'm looking forward to your perspective on that.
Yeah, and this is probably one of the more difficult parts of it. You know that basically for electronic payments today, indeed, of course, your bank, and I think, Anna, you talked about this already, your payment service provider processes certain data and is normally aware of all the transactions, just because also they have to be processed. And secondly, indeed, let's say for, let's say, anti-money laundering purposes, there is indeed a, let's say, monitoring also of individual transactions. And from our perspective, we do feel that a digital euro needs to offer at least the possibility, indeed, to have, not to have this. So not to have indeed a monitoring of individual transactions. We do think that, let's say, on the other hand, let's say when it comes to the opening of a let's say, yeah, digital device, or however you want to do that, opening of a digital account, however you want to call it, basically, that this is something where it is not disproportionate indeed, that you also need to identify yourself basically. So if you want to open your digital euro wallet or account with a certain bank or with the post office, you would need indeed to identify yourself, just to indeed avoid that there's completely anonymous, let's say wallets and accounts. But I think that's again quite similar to the way cash works today. Indeed, normally you don't find it on the street, but indeed, well, you normally have an account, and then indeed you take it from the ATM. And then indeed you have two possibilities. One is indeed online payments, and well, if I go on the website of Amazon or any kind of European competitor and you buy something, well, you know that data is flowing. I mean, that is something you're taking into account. On the other hand, if you basically today go with your banknote in the shop, then indeed no data is flowing and nobody can monitor this specific transaction. And comparable to that, indeed, we would then also propose that indeed there is the possibility also to use the digital euro in an offline way, so through an offline device. It would essentially mean that you put two cards or two devices, or let's say two mobile phones together in a way. And let's say by this, let's say €5, for example, moves from one of these devices to the other. Without indeed this being settled centrally, without indeed any kind of data on this transaction being kind of, let's say, then moved up to the bank or to the central banks, basically. So the banks or the central banks would simply know that one of these two devices has maybe gone from 10 to €5, and the other one has gone from 5 to 10 euros. So they would just see the ultimate balance, basically, plus or minus, but not more than this. This is something which is technically not necessarily easy, and probably Mr. Cipollone can tell you much more about this. And we have also investigated this. At the same time, I think there's a joint commitment, indeed, also from the ECB, and the discussion indeed to make this to make this happen, indeed, because it is essential to have this privacy. As some people have pointed out in the chat, also we have had in the past, indeed, also the so-called offline, let's say, electronic means of payment in some member states, and they have not survived. So the question is asked, well, is this really realistic? And I think the answer to that, from my perspective, would precisely be that these, of course, have been kind of considered as purely commercial projects, and indeed, apparently, the amount of transactions, let's say, carried out by these through these offline devices were apparently not sufficient. That's at least what I know, for example, here from Belgium, to actually justify this investment. with the digital euro, that's exactly where indeed a digital euro as a public, let's say, means of payment makes maybe a difference and comes in, because there indeed it is, let's say, not only about indeed a payment system being profitable, but it is indeed also there's some kind of, if you want, public good or public service commitment here. And that is why we do think that even though in the past this was not successful, these offline approaches, we think that in the context of the digital euro, this would be possible. But again, as I mentioned, we are not fully there yet, and the ECB is working on quite hard in a way also on the technical aspects of this, as I understand. But Mr. Cipollone may complement to make this happen. I maybe also want to make one other point, looking also a bit, reading at the comments in the chat. I think it is very clear moving to a digital euro is not a small choice. It's an important choice. It's a relevant choice as well. And as people also point out, well, a digital euro is not, it is not cash. We are not talking about digital cash. The moment you make something digital, it changes its nature, basically. That's very clear. So I think what Mr. Cipollone talked about was cash-like privacy. So we're trying to come as closely as possible to cash, but it is not exactly the same. I think that's very clear. Then the question can be, well, do we want to stay away from it, basically, because it creates so many challenges and it's not easy, as we just seeing. I mean, I think that we would on our side really have a strongly different. We cannot leave the digital future to well, the Chinese defining the currency, public currencies in the digital age. We cannot leave it just to let's say private companies. Yes, it is not easy. Yes, it is a challenge, but I mean, the public sector in Europe needs to be present in this market. I think that's very important for our from our perspective, basically. It is difficult, but we're moving towards, as you also mentioned, Zan, there is a move towards more digital, not because we want it, but because citizens want this. So we need to take into account of this, and if we don't offer a kind of a public European alternative, then others will fill the space, and I don't think I would have necessarily the confidence that they would be better in terms of data protection or other points than the ECB or the public sector in Europe.
Thank you very much. That was a strong plea for the digital euro with all the passion we share here, I guess, right, the latter aspect. But I think what we see as parliamentarians in this legislative period as well, that the European Union moves towards more sovereignty, right? Because of, you mentioned China, for example, because of other factors that influence our policies in a way that we realize much more that we should also, you know, work on some issues at a European level. And I think also I share your opinion on that, that the digital euro should serve as a public good. And I think there's a lot we agree on, but of course, there's still a lot to clarify. And when I see, dear Axel Schäfer, the comments in the Q&A questions, there's still a question, even if you mentioned it already, some parts of it, what challenges does the retail sector expect with the rollout of the digital euro, and how can these challenges best be addressed in the legislative process? Because if you would meet for coffee, of course, for example, you would name them exactly, right, the challenges and what is needed in the legislative process. So I would be happy to hear them. Thanks as well.
That's a very good question, and we'll very likely touch upon some of the technical implications of the design of a digital euro, which is currently undertaken by the so-called rulebook development group. Since the digital euro will be based on a scheme, a proper, let's say, payment instrument, necessarily there will have to be, you know, rules underpinning the functioning of a digital euro, and these rules will ultimately determine, of course, the way transactions will be made, the way the digital euro will be issued to end users, but it will also very likely indicate how the digital euro will work in the, you know, customer and merchant facing environment. So it's going to be very, very important for the likes of Anna and myself to be involved in these discussions, to make sure that that these rules, you know, correspond with our requirements. Because if indeed these rules are designed or written in a way that will become utterly cumbersome merchants to implement such a solution, of course, it will be very difficult to endorse the project going forward. So fortunately, we are invited to sit around the table and to give advice where we can. We're happy to do that also going forward in the upcoming phase. The main challenges are, of course, to make sure that we create, to the extent possible, interoperability with existing solutions. This is what I referred to earlier, tightly connected, of course, to the legal tender status, which will be somewhat difficult for us to support if we can't really ensure this technical interoperability of existing solutions. That is, in my opinion, the most crucial point. Then, of course, if you go further into the details, you may look at the different interfaces that will have to be designed. They should, of course, also be somewhat open, but they should also, be concise to be designed so that they can really, cater for the highest quality services possible. So it's a fine line that we're working with together with the people in the project. But I can only repeat what I've said earlier. Ultimately, what will determine the success is the consumer uptake and the user experience of the solution that will be brought to the market, paired, of course, with the privacy settings. If the digital euro is not going to be appealing to the end user, I'm afraid it will not fly.
I agree on that, definitely. The consumer has to know what it means and what benefit he has, right, about this project. So I've seen in the Q&A section a question in that regard as well that I'm very interested to Mr. Cipollone. We have a question on what public communication and outreach you're planning in the next phase to bring the digital euro closer to the citizens. And of course, this is a very important question. And what are, in your opinion, the key factors you should communicate, right, to convince people or to explain if it's a project that is worthwhile to be implemented?
Now, this is key. As Alex was saying, ultimately, the success will depend on whether people will use it or not, right? This is true for any means of payments, and therefore will be true for digital euro. So we need to communicate at large with the specific communication targeted to different groups of people. So consumer will be essential to explain, and we need to explain to them the advantages, what would be the ultimate goal. For example, this idea of having public money to pay in e-commerce is something essential to explain to people. I guess, if I recall correctly, 20% of no cash transactions are for e-commerce, 20%, which means a huge amount of transaction cannot be performed with public money. And this will be more and more so like this. So you need to explain to people that you don't need a credit card to do e-commerce, that with one single device, you can cater for all your needs, basically, all over Europe. Which means that you don't need to go to another country to enjoy this feature, right? You can buy whatever you want across states, and you don't need a specific credit card to do that. So consumer will be essential. And we will do it through focus group, specific communication when, and a communication which relies on modern means, meaning, videos, involvement, examples, So this is essential, but it's not the only one. This is a two-sided market. So merchants have to understand what their advantage will be as well. But also we need to communicate to intermediaries, which at this stage are the ones that are more somehow in some jurisdiction are skeptical because they are afraid that they will lose some market space. So for each of this group, we will have to explain what the advantages are, where the risks are, and how we are mitigating these risks. Because, I mean, this is a completely brand new tools to pay. And there are not many examples around the world. Yes, actually, there is one. But, we are kind of far away from that way of thinking. So, obviously, this is going to generate doubt, some skepticism, some fear. So we need to address taking it very seriously. Don't dismiss it. We need to work with people and explain what we are doing and listening. For example, just to give you an example of how this process has been going on for a while. The very beginning, for us, looking at the offline was not the priority, but not because it was not important, but because of the technological challenges. And we listen for people, to people how important is offline. So we are making an additional effort to address this. Also challenging technological firms to provide us a very safe instruments to pay offline, because it's when you go offline, there are some some tricky issue that you have to care to take account for. So the line we want to step up with that. So far, the discussion has been very technical, so it was very difficult to communicate to people, what kind of backend infrastructure you want to build. I mean, it's not something you talk about over dinner. But now that we have the idea more clear about what we are going to do, it's about time to communicate and to listen what the people want.
Yes, I definitely agree on that. Thank you very much. And at the very last round, which we don't have, but like in 10 minutes, because we have another 8 minutes together, I would like to ask you, what is your favorite topic on the digital euro, and or what is for you the most important challenge? But first of all, I have a question to Anna Martin again. I would like to ask you about the privacy questions that are in the chat, but you addressed so much in your intervention before. So I see some of our viewers are concerned that access to the digital euro will be difficult, for instance, for people without a fixed residence. And how can we make sure to make the digital euro as inclusive as possible? Because that's, of course, a very important argument for us, is it's an inclusive project, but on a practical base, how can we handle that?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I will get to there, but I would like to say one very quick note also on the communication. Because I think when I discussed this project first with my experts from the national consumer organizations, many referred actually back to the introduction of the euro and told me, like, remember when the euro was introduced, the many doubts you had from citizens about the project. Will everything become more expensive? How will I calculate? What is the conversion between free Deutsche Mark? And then, I mean, in Germany, it was relatively easy, but in some other countries, in Italy, for instance, it was probably, you required quite some math. So there is a lot of fears about, but then ultimately the project has to speak for itself. And if there is a lot of advantages, people will move to adoption. So that's I still wanted to add this anecdote. And now for the financial inclusion, indeed, we would like to have citizens, also if they have no residence, for example, be able to use the digital euro. And this is one very important aspect, that when we do the onboarding requirements, so when you open an account, you are not asked for all sorts of elements which you cannot provide. And this is a discussion we also have with the basic payment account. What kind of data do you have to provide to open an account? And we currently have a lot of practices of de-risking, so that bank institutions, payment service providers are afraid of opening accounts to people because they may come from a country where they're, which they feel there is perhaps more criminal activity. So this is something we have to take very seriously, and the European Banking Authority is now very looking into this, and there is also a provision in the proposal to really outrule these de-risking practices. So this is something also very important for financial inclusion.
Thank you very much. And now we have only 5 minutes left till the end. So let me make this round I mentioned before. What are the biggest challenges for you on the digital euro, or what is your favorite topic you like about the digital euro that I would be very interested in? And I would start with Mr. Cipollone.
To me, it's very easy. It's the pan-European dimension of it. Europe has been with us 25 years, and we are still waiting for, being able to pay with one single instrument throughout Europe. We still talk about cross-border transaction when we speak, despite the fact that we have a unique market and a single currency. So for me, and I am old enough to say that, for me is the pan-European dimension. So it's also the political dimension of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I share that view, because I'm not, as middle-aged, I still remember in a very strong way the introduction of the euro, which was a very special moment for me as well, I have to say. And it's in the core of the European integration process. So we could modernize and innovate this project to make it real. I would be really happy, but of course we have to be careful on, solving all the issues about. And dear Axel Schäfer, what do you think about the challenges, or what is your most preference on this topic of the digital euro?
Yeah, I really liked Mr. Cipollone's take on this, and this very much corresponds with the first aspect I had mentioned earlier, that this truly pan-European aspect of the introduction of the digital euro, of course, is something that we strongly support. We have supported also private initiatives in the space in the past, and ideally, anticipating the introduction of a holistic payment mean that will also strengthen really this European spirit. I think that's for us a key motive for our support. At the same time, we acknowledge that there is a lot of skepticism around this project in parts of societies, which I think to which I think it's important that a very strong, well, not strong, but an elaborate and comprehensive communication and education should be conducted in order to also inform citizens on what this project is really about and what it can bring for them. I think it's important to make it as tangible as possible so that people understand what's in for them. Because I repeat myself, at the end of the day, it's the many people who will decide.
Yes, I agree on that. Thank you very much. And dear Jan Seysens, what is the biggest challenge for you, or what's your preferred topic when you talk about the digital euro?
Well, I think I would agree with what Mr. Cipollone and Mr. Schäfer mentioned. Maybe I think the biggest challenge in this context is indeed to, let's say, think what can actually, does something having the function of public money in the digital age, what does it mean, and how can you shape something which kind of takes this function of cash in the traditional world And in that sense, in that context, how can you, I think that comes out quite well in the chat. We have the big principles, which are about privacy and all the rest of it. And then we also know that consumers in real life, that Axel knows a lot about, actually, I mean, very often they don't behave by principles, but they just behave by convenience. And so I think to build something which basically respects the principles, but also, let's say, ensures that, as we know that citizens don't only live by principles, and probably we ourselves don't either, that is also convenient and usable and actually has also an actual chance of being used. I think striking this balance, basically, I think is the biggest challenge, I would personally.
Thank you very much. And dear Anna Martin, what do you think about the challenges or the most positive aspects of the digital euro?
Yeah, well, I mean, my favorite topic is actually the privacy aspects, because I think one of your colleagues from the German Greens, Jan-Philipp Albrecht, he was at the time the GDPR rapporteur, and he said data is the new oil, and that's very much true still. And payment data is actually one of the data which is the most sensitive, where you get a lot of insights on which medical doctor somebody went to, which shop somebody is going to, which type of goods and services somebody is purchasing, and it tells you about the whole life of consumers. And it can be used in many different ways. And I think ramping up the privacy when we are moving more and more online is something which is really key to me. And I'm very much looking forward to the digital euro being a privacy-proof and convenient solution online.
Thank you very much. I agree on that. The privacy of payments with the digital euro is very important, of course, except the money laundering aspect we have to consider as well, but these are on the huge amounts and a different context we have to consider. So thank you very much. I think that was a great exchange on an important topic for our European economy and society going forward. And the digital euro has the potential to fundamentally alter how electronic payments are made in Europe. It can help strengthen our monetary sovereignty, reduce our dependence on non-EU payment service providers. Financial and digital inclusion can be ensured by making it an inherent part of its design, and privacy can be addressed if we get the technical details right, but we have to work on that. Of course, we will. However, today's discussions has also clearly shown that to harness the potential of this project, we need to find the right approach with such major decisions as the introduction of a digital euro. I think it's crucial to get it right from the start. Today's exchange was a step in that direction. I would really appreciate if we stay in contact and if we are critical, to explore all the challenges enough and to have answers, to get fine answers on that. That is what is our work, right? And I really appreciate that you had the time, dear wonderful speakers, to talk about this topic today. And dear audience at home or in the offices still, I really appreciate all your remarks and your participation. So I'm looking forward to hear from all of you again, to see you and to work towards this wonderful project, the Digital Euro. Thank you very much for being here tonight and have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good evening.
Bye.